Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to another video, welcome if you are new. Today is a very exciting day. I am going to be taking you through the 90 books that are on my physical TBR. So these are books I own that I need to read, that I need to get around to, and I thought I would walk you through them all, and then if there's any in particular you want me to read or you have on your TBR or anything, leave them down below in a comment, and then maybe I'll pick a couple. Who am I to believe I'm gonna get more than one comment, but I will pick them and read them in a video. So these are my new bookshelves. If you're not a subscriber of mine, 1, subscribe. 2, you will know I bought a cheap bookcase on Amazon and it was too small and I grew out of it very quickly. So I decided, now I had a car and I could go collect them, to buy 2 Billy bookcases from IKEA, and I have to say there is a significant quality difference between the Amazon one and the IKEA one, and you should just go for the IKEA ones. They're fab, they're absolutely amazing, freaking love them. The next task for me is to fill in the little holes and paint them, but that's a task for another day. Should we go through every single book that's on my physical TBR? I'm a bit stressed that there's 90. I used to be a buy a book, read a book, take it to the charity shop kind of girl. I used to max have 10 books on my TBR, so the fact there's 90, it's quite stressful. But let's go. On the top shelf, there are only 4 books that I haven't read, which isn't too bad. We have Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young, which will be my first book by this author. So fascinated, interested. I get the impression this is I can't describe every single book. I just can't. This has some interesting tropes in it that I'm not sure I'm 100% there for. Revolves around children. Not a massive maternal person, so I'm kind of avoiding it, but yeah, I've got this book to read. I've got this. Some of these you will see in my March TBR, so by the time this goes up, I might have read them. I had to film it at some point. This is Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice, which is the 4th book in the Finlay Donovan series. I love this series so much. It's fun, effortless, easy, giggly, just have a great time. Follows an author who accidentally becomes a hit woman. All you need to know. It's fab. I'm grinning. We then have The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, which follows 2 twins who one's lucky and one's not, and something happens beyond that point. This will be my first book by this author, so. And the last one on this shelf is Emily Henry Book Lovers. I read Happy Place, liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it. I think I rated it 5 stars, but it's not the 5-star for me. So I'm excited, but I wouldn't say I'm obsessed yet. But then again, I've only read 1 of her books, so. On the next shelf, we have 5 books left to read. We've got Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I am so interested about this book. It follows an artist who suffers with a condition where she forgets faces. And that sounds so interesting. So can't wait to read this. And then we have the book 2, 3, 4 and 5 from Elsie Silver's, what's this series called? I can't remember. This series. I've read book 1, or is Flawless book 1? Is this actually book 5? I don't remember what order they go in, but I've read book 1. This next shelf basically holds books I need to read, so I'm going to go through them series by series. We have Light Lark by Alex Astor. I'm one of those weirdos who buys the entire series before they even started them. I don't like not finishing things. I'm like that with everything in my life. So I either will avoid it for years and years and years, but then eventually get around to it, or I'll binge it in one go and there is nowhere in between. So yeah, I bought Light Lark and I'm excited. These are slightly bigger paperbacks than a standard paperback, and then this is accidentally a hardback. We've got 2 V.E. Schwab books, A Darker Shade of Magic and The Fragile Threads of Power. These are both book 1 in trilogies, but I think this one follows this trilogy, I want to say. So I need to read this one first and then buy book 2 and 3 and then go on to this one. But I love V.E. Schwab's writing. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue was one of my favourite books from last year. the Prison Healer trilogy by Lynette Noni. I literally know nothing about this other than people rave about it, which is quite a bold thing to then buy an entire series about, but Prison Healer is on my 25 to read in 2025, so I will get around to it, but I know very little. We then have Babel. If you've watched my March TBR video, you will know that I'm terrified to read this book, but I feel like I'm gonna love it. I'm just quite intimidated by it. We then have Assistant to the Villain, which is the first book in this series. I feel like the plot of the book is basically in the title, but I'm so excited to read this. I think it's going to be so much fun. We then have The Beholders by Hester Masson. I know literally nothing about this. I picked it up because it's a standalone fantasy, historical... No idea. I actually don't even know what genre this is. I'm not even going to pretend. And then I have the Butcher and Blackbird trilogy, which I am so excited. This, to me, is similar to like Assistant. It's a similar vibe to Assistant to the Villain, but I'm buzzing. I can't wait. I feel like I am one of the last people alive who hasn't read this series. This is book 4, 5, 6 and 7 from Throne of Glass from Sarah J Maas. Book 4, I think this is on my March TBR, which I will definitely read. And then I'm going to read the next 2 books as the tandem read because that just sounds like so much fun. But yeah, I need to read these, and these are hefty books. I have Gleanings by Neil Shusterman, which is like a random add-on book to the Scythe trilogy. Like the trilogy is finished, it's wrapped up, the story is done, and then there's like an extra book. So I actually don't know what this is about, but I loved the Scythe trilogy. Very excited to see where this goes. Then I've got 2 series which are quite similar. They're reimagined retellings of kind of, not fantasy books, what are they called? I can't remember what the expression is, but they're retellings of them. So we've got Emily McIntyre's one, so Hooked, Scarred, Wretched, Twisted and Crossed. I've heard good things about these, and they're like standalone series, so they're connected, but they're kind of not. And then we have Christina Henry's one, which is, there's a trilogy in here, which Alice is the first one, and then I can't figure out Red Queen, Looking Glass, or Looking Glass, Red Queen. And then we have Lost Boy and Near the Bone. So this and Emily McIntyre's series are quite similar, like similar vein, but I feel like they're going to be quite good like palette cleansers and like quite easy books to read. So yeah, I've not really heard many people talk about the Christina Henry ones, but I've heard a lot of people talk about the Emily McIntyre ones. I'm probably the only person alive who's not read the Housemaid trilogy by Frida McFadden. I even gifted this to my mum for Christmas without even reading it. But I have the whole trilogy. I will read it at some point, just not yet. This is my TBR from Jennifer Lynn Barnes. You've got book 3 and book 4 in the Natural series, which is like following a group of teenagers who are working for the FBI, basically. And then we have book 1 to 4, and then 5 comes out in paperback, I think in autumn. And this is the Inheritance Games, which is, I think, a different genre. But yeah, love this author. Such bingeable writing. Like, her writing is just effortless. And then 3 more books on this shelf. We have Dark Matter by Rick Gagosky. This, I think, is my least reviewed book on Goodreads. I think it's got like 100 reviews. I honestly picked this up for 50p in a sale in Waterstones. It kind of follows an old man, or I assume old, but a man who has lost his wife and is dealing with the grief of it, and it just sounded really interesting, so picked that one up. We then have The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I read The Guest List. I read, what's the other one called? Hunting Party, I think is her other book. They're all fine. I wouldn't say she's my favourite thriller author, but they're like good, easy mystery thrillers to read. And then we have Peter James' The Secret of Cold Hill, which is the second book in a sort of connected series. I don't think you have to read them in order. It follows basically a haunted house, or at least in the first book, that like kills its inhabitants. Like it's dark, and I love Peter James. Peter James's writing. He wrote Perfect People, which I think is my favourite book, at least the book that stayed with me for the longest. So I love his writing. We have the 4, 5, 6 and 7 in the Harry Potter series. I'm currently about 50 pages into Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire, and then we'll read Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows. Hallows? Yeah, Hallows. I actually didn't read these when I was a kid. Like, I think I was probably the only person alive who didn't read Harry Potter when they were younger. I obviously watched the films and I read book 1, 2 and 3, but why I didn't move beyond it, I don't know, but I'm reading them now. We've veered into my like books I'm reading that I used to either read the author or the series when I was younger. So we've got the Tattooed Heart, A Messenger of Fear novel by Michael Grant. Michael Grant wrote the Gone series I was like obsessed with. Book 1 of this series was so flat for me, so I will read this, but I'm kind of avoiding it. And then, I don't know why, these are all different editions. I picked them up from different places and I don't have the 4th one. But we've got Twilight, New Moon and Eclipse. I'm missing the last one. Breaking Dawn? I'm kind of rereading it to like giggle at it. Although from memory, the books are pretty good. It was the film that got a bit cringy. We then have many books in the House of Night series. So I'm not going to count them because I don't remember how many there are, but I've got some in a different edition. So these ones, which are now upside down, are in a different edition to like the versions that I used to read. This is a series I read as a teenager and it wasn't finished, and they kept re-releasing, well not re-releasing, they kept releasing books after I'd stopped reading them. And so I'm now going back and starting the series again so that I can actually get to the end and find out how it ended. It was always one of those series that I wondered what the ending was, but just never actually got there. So I've read book 1 and book 2. I have to say they're quite childish, so I'm hoping the books grow up a little as you get further through them. But yeah, many books. We have 3 fantasy style books. So one is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I only have the first book of this series. It's a dark fantasy romance, which I actually haven't read, I don't think, any in this genre before. So I just picked up book 1 to like give it a try and see if I liked it. We then have The Wren Hunt by Mary Watson, which is about a hunt that happens every year. And wren is normally, I think you're supposed to think that they're like chasing them, but actually wren is secretly powerful. I can't remember. I actually don't know what this book's about because I haven't read it. And then we have Reckless, which is book 2 of the Powerless trilogy. Trilogy? 4 books? I don't know. Book 2 by Lauren Roberts. 3 books by Leigh Bardugo. The last one in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I'm finding this trilogy a little bit boring, but I love the world that they are creating. And it's part of what's known as her like Grishaverse or Greshaverse, which is like the universe in which all her books are set. So I'm very interested to see where it goes, but at the moment I'm a bit bored. And then the next books I'm going to read are Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which are in the same world. I've then got The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. Similar situation to The Beholders. I picked this up because it's like a standalone, what I think is fantasy. I actually don't know. I picked it up because it's not a series, and sometimes I don't want to read a whole series. We then have The Humans by Matt Haig. We seem to be following a dog. I don't know, Matt Haig writes some weird books. He also wrote The Midnight Library. We then have Game Changer by Neil Shusterman, which is the same author as the Scythe trilogy / 4 books. I actually don't even know what this is about, I just bought it because it's the same author. And then we have Iron Flame, which is book 2 in the Fourth Wing series. I'm kind of putting this one off until book 3 is out in paperback, which I know won't be for like another year. I kind of want to go straight into book 3 because this, I hear, is quite slow. I also hear I don't know if it's the cliffhanger at the end of this book or the cliffhanger at the end of the next book, but there's a terrible cliffhanger, so I'm currently just avoiding it. Is that healthy? I mean, it's a book. We've got 2 Holly Black books. So I have read the whole Cruel Prince trilogy and then The King of Elfhame, which is the short stories before after. Some short stories. And then I also picked up The Stolen Heir, which follows the son that gets taken out of the... I can't really tell you without telling you what the trilogy's about, but it follows the son from the main trilogy. And then I got The Darkest Part of the Forest, which I think is a different series but set in the same world. So it's following different characters, but there's the same like rules and laws and everything. So I promise you, very nearly there. I've got 3 more fantasies, 2 standalones, and 1 starts a series. I am so excited to read this book. This is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli, I think is how you pronounce her last name. It's also called The Heartless Hunter in I think just the States. I was waiting for this book to come out in paperback for so long, and now I own it. I think it came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I can't wait to read it. The second book is now out in hardback, and like it follows a witch hunter and a witch, and they obviously fall in love, and that just sounds like so much fun. We then have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I honestly got recommended this by the Waitrose, not the Waitrose, that's the wrong shop, Waterstones shop assistant. So I don't know anything about this. It's a beautiful cover, that much I can tell you. And then we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which falls in the same category as some other of these books. I bought it because it's standalone. I honestly just googled standalone fantasy books and bought like 5 of them. And here we have it. I picked up basically the entire back catalogue of Taylor Jenkins Reid in a charity shop ages ago. I've read The Seven Husbands and I've read After I Do, and I enjoyed them both. I wouldn't say they're like firm favourites, but I did really enjoy them. And I basically have the rest of them still to go. So Maybe in Another Life, Carrie Sato is Back, Malibu Rising, One True Loves, and I have read Forever Interrupting. I've read 3. So these 4 are the ones still to read. I really enjoyed actually no, I did enjoy. I enjoyed Forever Interrupted and After I Do. And I think I'm alone in the world for feeling kind of lukewarm about The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I found the ending a little bit predictable. So when I read it, everyone was like, the ending is going to shock you so much. And I was like, does it? And then the last 4 books on my physical TBR, she says, are One Day by David Nichols, which I'm not gonna lie, I bought it because it was cheap in a charity shop. I don't really know much about it. I've read 2 of his books before, Us and The Understudy, and both of them have been a bit like 3-starry, so I'm gonna read it, but like I feel like I'm gonna like feel a bit lukewarm about it. We then have The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey, don't know how you pronounce her last name. I was in a bookshop, quite a small bookshop. It was a WH Smith in a train station, and the cover is like stunning, and 2, I picked it up and read the blurb, and it sounded really interesting. It's following I think 5 sisters, and it sounds quite interesting, that they're all a bit messy, and the cover was cool. And then to finish off, the last books on my physical TBR are both by Coco Mellers. I don't know why I've got 2 books by this author and I haven't read them, and I bought the second book without reading the first. But we've got Blue Sisters, which is the new book, which is like everywhere at the moment, and then Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which I feel like that was everywhere when that book came out. I haven't read them. I don't really know a huge amount about them. I know this follows also a group of sisters, and I don't really know what this one does or doesn't follow. I get the impression there's like 2 people get married and maybe it's a mistake. I feel like sometimes I just want something that's not like a fantasy, not a romance, I guess it's called fiction. And sometimes they're just like nice books to read. So those are all the books on my physical TBR. I then have 1 library book currently out, which I haven't read, which is In at the Deep End by Kate Davies, which follows someone who hasn't had sex in a long time and just decides to go do it lots and lots of times with lots of different people. Why have I rented this book out? I don't know. So those are all the books on my physical TBR. If you haven't watched any of my reading vlogs before, you will know that probably 1 in 3 sometimes 1 in 2 of the books I read are actually from the library. So strictly speaking, I have a TBR of like a couple thousand books, if you want to look at it that way. But I have actually a really solid library where I've moved to, and it's in like a whole family of libraries, because that's how libraries in the UK work, that you sign up to a library in your like council area, and then you can go to like any of them. And I live in quite a big council, so therefore there's lots of libraries. I think there's like 15 that I can go to and get books out from. And like I just finished a book that I could like order from another library and get delivered to our library, so it was just... And then there's ebooks and audiobooks, so I will read probably far more than what is just on this shelf. But these are the physical books that I own that are on my physical TBR. I then have a couple of books on pre-order, which will arrive when they come out. So just to give you a little rundown of what those are. We have the last book in the Inheritance Game series, which actually doesn't have a title, which it must do because the hardback's out, but it's titleless on here. I then have Then Things Went Dark by B. Fitzgerald. Most of these books are out in hardback. I'm just waiting for the paperback to come out. I think this one's the one that's set in a reality TV show that goes wrong. We've got Holly Black, The Prisoner's Throne, which is the second book in this duology. We've got The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. Sounds fascinating. It's about a woman who keeps going up into, I want to say, her loft, and every time she comes back downstairs there's another husband. What? So it just sounds really fun, so I've pre-ordered that one. We've got When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, which sounds so much fun. I actually can't wait to read that. We've got The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson, who wrote the Good Girls Guide to Murder trilogy, which I absolutely loved. And then I think that's it. I mean, there'll probably be other paperbacks that I will pre-order at some point, but those are the ones that are currently on their way to me. I just love it. Let me put these two back. I just love my books. I have always, and I've said this, if you've watched my videos, you will know, I have always been a reader. Like, I was that kid who sat in the school library and read constantly. And then when I was at university, I used to go to the book charity shop and kind of use it like a library. I was there all the time bringing books back. I also used the library in Southampton, like the local library, and borrowed loads of books. And then I've just been reading ever since. It's got a little bit out of hand recently, but I don't think there's been a year in my life I've read less than like 50 books. Like, I just read constantly. And I never used to keep books. I used to read them, take them back to the charity shop, call it a day. And then about a year ago, maybe a bit more, I decided to start keeping them because I really wanted this like situation in my life where I just had all of my books around me. And I think because I rented, I never really like wanted loads of books because I didn't want to move with them. And then when buying a house kind of became a reality, or like it was going to become a reality, I started keeping books. And I think I will unhaul books that I just don't want to have on my bookcase. The Michael Grant books, I'm looking at you. So there will be some books here that I won't keep, but I'm now just ranting about how much I love books, man. So I'm going to finish this here. If you want me to read any of these, let me know down in the comments below. Or if you basically just want to ask anything, or talk about anything, or say anything, love books. Anyway, I will see you guys in my next video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, leave a comment. You guys know what to do. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!